Raksha market. The story goes that Ma Ji, also known as Long Mai, was the son of a merchant. He was handsome and talented, displaying a carefree and generous disposition since childhood. He enjoyed singing and dancing, often performing with traveling theater troupes, draping silk scarves around his head like a beautiful girl. As a result, he gained the nickname Jun Ren, meaning handsome person. He passed a provincial examination at the age of 14 and became well known. As his father grew old and frail, he stopped his merchant business and urged Ma Ji to take over. Ma Ji gradually started his own business. One day, he went overseas for business with others but was caught in a hurricane. After drifting for several days and nights, he arrived in a city. The people there were all extremely ugly and mistook Ma Ji for a monster, fleeing in fear upon seeing him. Initially scared by this reaction, Ma Ji eventually started intimidating them when he realized they were afraid of him. He would snatch leftover food from their plates and eat it after they ran away. After a while, he entered a mountain village where the people, while somewhat human-like, were dressed in rags, resembling beggars. Resting under a tree, the villagers watched him from a distance. Over time, they grew more comfortable and approached him cautiously. Despite the language barrier, Ma Ji managed to communicate with them, and he shared his story. The villagers were delighted and spread the word that the visitor wasn't a threat. However, the extremely ugly residents still avoided him, while those who looked more similar to humans interacted with him. The villagers explained their poverty, stating that their country valued appearance over talent. Where the most beautiful became high officials, those slightly less attractive became lower officials. And even less attractive individuals were favored by nobles, receiving rewards and food to support their families. Those like them, who were born with less desirable appearances, were often abandoned by their parents. Asked about their country's name, the villagers said it was called the Liaozhai country, and the capital was 30 miles to the north. Ma Ji's interest was piqued, and he decided to accompany them to the capital. Upon arriving at the city, he observed its peculiar architecture. Black stone walls and towers with roofs made of red stone, similar in color to cinnabar. He witnessed strange-looking officials with bizarre features, and even a prime minister with ears on the back of his head and 3 nostrils. Ma Ji's interactions with the locals led to a unique friendship with a retired official who decided to present him to the king. The king, intrigued by Ma Ji, sought his advice on governing the kingdom. Ma Ji shared his insights, earning the king's approval and high praise. He was granted the title of Xiadafu, lower great scholar, and frequently invited to the palace for banquets. Despite the success, Ma Ji's true identity was eventually revealed, leading to his isolation. Feeling increasingly uncomfortable, he requested to resign from his position, but the king refused. Instead, the king granted him a 3-month vacation. During his leave, Ma Ji returned to the mountain village where he was warmly welcomed. He distributed his wealth to his friends and learned about the upcoming Raksha market, a place where people from 12 countries gathered to trade precious goods. With his friends, Ma Ji decided to join them on this adventure. He was told that the market would start after seeing red birds flying over the sea. As the date approached, the villagers advised him to stay back. But Ma Ji, confident as a traveler of the sea, eagerly awaited the upcoming journey. In just a few days, people indeed came to their door, sending money for them to buy things. Ma Ji and the villagers loaded the money onto a boat and set off together. The boat could accommodate dozens of people with a flat bottom and high railings. 10 people rowed the oars, and the boat moved like an arrow. After 3 days, they could see amidst the rippling water and layered pavilions. Various ships gathered for trade, resembling swarming ants. Shortly after, they arrived at the city and saw towering buildings and walls as long as a person. They docked their boats and saw the market filled with exquisite and dazzling goods, unlike anything seen before. A young man rode a swift horse over, and the market-goers hastily cleared the way, referring to him as the East Ocean Third Prince. The prince approached, and upon seeing Ma Ji, remarked, "This person doesn't come from a remote small country." A person who cleared the way before him asked Ma Ji where he was from. Ma Ji performed a bow by the roadside and explained his origin and surname. The prince was pleased and offered him a horse to accompany him. Leaving the western city, they had barely reached the shore when the horse neighed and leaped into the water. Ma Ji screamed in fear, but he saw the sea part in the middle, with walls of water on both sides. After a moment, they spotted a palace with mother-of-pearl adorned beams and fish scale-like tiles, gleaming like crystal on all sides. Ma Ji dismounted, and the prince invited him inside. Looking up, he saw the Dragon King seated in the hall. The prince introduced Ma Ji, and the Dragon King was pleased to meet him. He then asked Ma Ji to compose an article about the Rakshasa sea market. Ma Ji accepted, and the Dragon King provided him with the tools he needed. Ma Ji quickly wrote a detailed article, and the Dragon King praised his talent. A banquet was held, and the Dragon King even offered his daughter to Ma Ji in marriage. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Ma Ji accepted. The next morning, Ma Ji and the Dragon King's daughter married in a grand ceremony. Afterward, they spent time together in the Dragon Palace, enjoying each other's company. However, Ma Ji eventually expressed his homesickness and desire to return to his parents. The Dragon King agreed to let him visit his family. With the promise of returning, Ma Ji bade farewell to the Dragon King and his daughter. Upon returning, Ma Ji shared his experiences with the villagers, and they prepared a farewell feast for him. The Dragon King sent him off the next morning, and Ma Ji carried precious gifts from the Dragon Palace. The Dragon King told Ma Ji to return in 3 years on April 8th, and he would be sent back with his children. As the Dragon King left, the sea waters merged once again, and Ma Ji walked back ashore. Since Ma Ji had been carried away by the sea, people believed he had died. Upon his return home, his family was astonished and doubtful. Fortunately, his parents were still alive, but his wife had already remarried. It was then that Ma Ji understood the meaning behind the dragon princess's words of loyalty she had known about his wife's remarriage beforehand. His father considered finding him a new wife, but Ma Ji declined, accepting only a maidservant as a concubine. He kept in mind the 3-year deadline given by the dragon princess. When the appointed day came, Ma Ji returned to the island by boat. He saw 2 children sitting on the water's surface, splashing and laughing without sinking. When he approached, he reached out and one child grabbed his arm, jumping into his embrace. The other child cried loudly, seeming to reproach Ma Ji for not pulling them up sooner, so he lifted both of them. Upon closer inspection, it was a boy and a girl, both handsome. Their hats were adorned with pieces of jade, the same as the red jade lotus flowers. They had a pouch on their backs, inside of which was a letter that read, "We imagine our parents are well." 3 years have passed in a blink, and the mundane world forever separates us. The waters divide us, and letters cannot cross. Yearning constantly, we can only meet in dreams. Anxious anticipation strains our necks. Faced with the vast sea, what can hatred accomplish? Like Chang yearning for the moon, she still guards the moon palace. The weaving maiden, forever melancholic by the Milky Way. Who am I to think that I can be eternally with my beloved? When this realization dawns, my tears turn into laughter. 2 months after our separation, we had a pair of children. Now they babble and learn to speak, understand laughter, touch jujubes and grab pears. They can survive without a mother. Now I return them to you. The red jade lotus flower you gifted adorns their hats as proof. Holding them on your knee, it's as if I'm beside you. Knowing you've upheld our past vows, I find solace. I'll remain faithful throughout my life and never remarry. No longer will I use fragrant ointments, nor adorn myself with makeup when looking in the mirror. You are like a wanderer far from home, and I, a wanderer's wife. Although separated by distance, we are still a loving couple. I regret that although you've held your grandchildren, you've yet to see your daughter-in-law. It's a defect that should be corrected. 1 year after my mother-in-law's funeral, I'll visit the grave and fulfill my daughter-in-law's duties. From now on, Dragon Palace remains peaceful, waiting for a reunion. Fortunate C enjoys longevity, and perhaps we can still communicate. Please take care of yourself, I could never say enough. Ma Ji read the letter repeatedly, tears streaming down his face. The children hugged his neck and said, "Let's go home." Ma Ji's sorrow deepened, and he asked them, "Do you know where our home is?" The children cried even more, crying out to go home. Ma Ji gazed at the boundless sea, unable to see the dragon princess's figure. The waves surged, blocking the path to the dragon palace. He could only turn the boat around, embracing the children with a heart full of sorrow. Knowing his mother's lifespan was short, Ma Ji prepared clothes in a coffin, planting over 100 pine trees at the graveyard. After a year, his mother passed away. As the funeral procession arrived at the graveyard, a woman in mourning attire approached the tomb and wept. As the crowd looked at her in surprise, suddenly strong winds and thunder roared, followed by heavy rain. In an instant, the woman vanished. The newly planted pine trees, previously withering, miraculously revived. As Fortunate C grew older, he often missed his mother. One day, he unexpectedly plunged into the sea and returned after a few days. However, the Dragon Palace remained off limits to him as he was a boy. He would weep alone when the door was closed. One day, a dark cloud suddenly covered the sky during daylight. The Dragon Princess entered his room and advised her daughter, "You've grown up and can start your own family. Why do you cry?" She gave her daughter a coral tree 8 feet tall, a vial of dragon brain incense, 100 pearls, and a pair of gold-inlaid treasure boxes as her dowry. When Ma Ji heard that the Dragon Princess had come, he rushed in and held her hand, weeping. In an instant, a thunderous roar shattered the roof, and the Dragon Princess disappeared. Pu Sun Ling said, using a charming facade, "The world is like a ghost. The desire for something repugnant is universal. Wearing a false mask to conform to societal norms is as eerie as the world of ghosts. Yet, the perverse inclination to distort beauty and ugliness is widespread throughout the world. While the realm of Rakshasa might be absurd, who doesn't live in such an absurd reality?"
Alright, this story has come to an end. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you.